Welcome to the Focus and Chill podcast, where we discuss productivity tactics that work for neurodivergent individuals.
Every episode, we interview guests with lived experience of neurodiversity who also have a solid productivity and habit game, and pass the learnings on to you, our wise and benevolent audience.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Joey.
I'm Joey, and I coach creatives to get moving on their most ambitious projects through the power of solid habits and strong focus. I'm also a perpetual student of psychology and perpetually on a quest to a one-armed chin-up.
And I'm Jeremy, a neurospicy software developer turned startup founder, building the Focus Bear app to help people with ADHD and autism thrive at work. My cool party trick is leaving parties early so I can get to sleep in time for my 2-hour-long morning routine. The Focus and Chill podcast is brought to you by Focus Bear, a focus enhancement app for ADHDers. That's adults with both combined autism and ADHD. I'm Jeremy, I'm an ADHDer myself. I'm the founder of Focus Bear and also one of the hosts of this podcast. I built Focus Bear for myself originally because I was constantly getting distracted by my phone and my laptop. I wanted a way to tame my ADHD monkey mind so I'd stop going down rabbit holes and actually get work done, but also get off my computer and my phone in the evening so I'd be able to sleep properly. It's working perfectly for me and it's helping a lot of ADHDs as well. I'd love for you to try it. It's available for Mac, Windows, iOS and Android, and it leverages most of the productivity strategies we talk about on the podcast. You can jump onto focusbear.io or just Google Focus Bear and try it out. Let me know what you think.
Welcome to episode number 72 of the Focus and Chill podcast. I'm lucky to be joined by Will Soward today. Will works creatively in a diverse field of digital media. He's invested in making online education more accessible for neurodiverse learners and the web a better place to learn. Will talks about UX and accessible UI design with communities in the design and education space. He has 7 years as a UX designer under his belt, 12 years as an adult educator, and 20 years designing and coding front end. Will is currently the lead UX and LX designer for Tait Communications in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Welcome to the show, Will. Really good to have you on. I think the discussion around UI and UX for neurodiverse learners is really interesting and something that I've been thinking about recently as well. So really keen to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I've been listening to your podcast quite a lot and checked out your app as well, which is very cool. So yeah, it all seems to align with both our missions, which is awesome.
So before we get into your work, I'm keen to hear about your own personal experience with neurodiversity. Can you tell us about your journey?
Yeah, I guess my own personal journey with neurodiversity is not uncommon for most people. I have the advantage of actually growing up in the UK, so I'm British, and as dyslexia was becoming more and more of an understood learning condition or learning disability in the UK, the government at the time were putting in measures in order to cater for people in those education spaces. So they are identifying children, mostly through screening, mostly through coming into tests in small schools. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was about 11, so quite a few years ago now. But it was still a very misunderstood, very challenging learning condition, learning disability for a lot of the academic staff or a lot of teaching professions during that time. However, saying that, as the few years rolled on and I got into secondary school, I was able to harness some of the public funding that was put into place for me. I was given extra time in exams and I was given extra support. Sometimes I didn't actually need it, but each year, each academic year, I would be diagnosed again, going through tests. So throughout my academic life, I was continually being assessed in that way. ADHD didn't really come into that picture or that frame, I think purely because there wasn't much of a screening around that time. So yeah, working with dyslexia and ADHD for me has been a challenge at times. I certainly found myself in a lot of positions throughout the years as I've been coming into adulthood. Becoming an adult at that time was certainly challenging. There was a lot of masking that I would do, especially in social situations, which I think is very common for most people who have certain levels and degrees of neurodiversity. The major challenge for me was certainly in academic performance. I could certainly do the work. I was capable of doing it, but I wasn't able to do it in the way that we were being taught to do it, purely because of the understanding in the education institutions at that time about neurodiversity and putting things in place. We were certainly running models from the old Victorian times of chalk and talk, and everybody sitting down and trying to be personal computers and just absorb content and rote learn and all that sort of thing. So I certainly knew from the get-go that I was able to learn in a different way. So a lot of it came down to my own self-learning and understanding context and being able to use my neurodiversity to my advantage to almost self-educate, but also put strategies in place from a very early age to know that I could actually get the best out of education, and the support services that were put in place really helped me. So I'm very privileged and very lucky to have grown up in a country where it was diagnosed early, and I was able to work through my academic career now with those advantages and strategies already in place.
What were some of the strategies that you learned that were different from the Victorian style?
Context a lot. I think it's especially for someone with dyslexia, having an educator read to you about a certain concept. That could be mathematics, it could be English language, it could be technology. In any degree, being able to explain something and write it on a board or talk from a textbook, or even just sit there and read a textbook, doesn't work for someone with dyslexia, purely because it's the out of context association with what's being presented to you at the time. Neurotypical people are able to almost imagine or conceptualize that understanding of what they might be reading very, not easily, but certainly in a more of an easier way than someone with dyslexia or a different neurotype. Happens with ADHD as well, and I think it really affected me. So I was able to sit there, listen to what people were saying, and go, "What? I need to get eyeballs on this thing. I need to look at it. I need to actually use it." It's almost like a break-fix approach to understanding a problem. If I can learn it or understand it in context doing it, then I'm able to understand exactly what's happening. I think it happens for most people, but it's greatly exaggerated in students with dyslexia.
Yeah, interesting. I find myself often in traditional learning environments asking a lot of questions that other people don't, along the lines of, why does this matter? How does this fit in with another piece of learning? Is that the sort of thing that you mean?
Yeah, it's a great observation. I always found myself asking more questions. And in those early years of the education space, there's also a little bit of masking that's going on as well. So there's kind of fearful of actually asking the questions because you want to be seen to be that kid who's always asking questions. And yeah, you do need to ask more questions in order to understand the context. Sometimes it's even just understanding the meaning of, why are we doing this? It's not just because it's you have to learn it. It's like, why does it matter? Why does it affect me? How does it affect me? In what way can I be using this? What's the purpose? And some of those things are certainly left out of, not so much today, but back then, academic principles of learning.
Yeah, right. I think it probably touches on ADHD as well in terms of the, why does it matter? Because I think back to mathematics education, and maybe it is different now, but when I was going through school, it was very abstract, and it was, we learn algebra because it is important. There wasn't ever a discussion of, these are some contexts where it could be used. And it was really interesting for me recently going back and doing some carpentry education. And the way that they teach maths is so different, because this is a group of learners who have not really engaged very well with mathematics education in the past. A lot of the apprentices haven't gone past year 10 at school. And so the way they teach it is, when we're learning trigonometry, it's not trigonometry for the sake of it. It's, we're about to build a roof next week. We need to figure out what angles the purlins are going to be at. Here's how you calculate it. I found it way much more engaging.
Absolutely, right. I mean, that's a great way of actually understanding the contextual theory of the subject that you might be learning. So yes, it's thankful to say, it's good to know that now that's something that's being used quite widely, is to learn trigonometry in a contextual way. It's pretty fantastic that that's happening now.
Does it help in terms of, with the dyslexia, is the context important partly for the vocab and the words as well?
Yes. Yeah, tripping over words. I think that what I previously just did then is aligning words into almost a stack to articulate my thoughts. It can be challenging sometimes, can be challenging a lot. It's not that I don't have the words there or understand what it is that I'm thinking. It's almost as though having the action of actually producing the sounds coming out of my mouth to have other people understand what it is that I'm thinking can be a challenge. It's almost as though if I could allow people to look inside my brain and understand what I'm thinking and what I'm conceptualizing and my thoughts, it would be a lot clearer. But yeah, also so much. The challenges also come into decoding as well. So reading and understanding a lot of material, whether that be sort of fictional, non-fictional, can also be a challenge. So I'm a very slow reader, but if I was able to watch a YouTube video about the same thing, I would understand it more because sometimes there's context being added. It's video clips or images and things like that. It builds a larger picture, which satisfies those areas of my brain that's looking for context.
What were, besides getting more context, what were some of the other changes that came, I guess, as you were growing up and post-diagnosis in terms of dyslexia, but also in terms of ADHD?
Yeah, ADHD is something that's certainly become more prominent for me as an adult. There's been a lot of strategies that I put in place myself, not so much with guidance of experts from a personal position, but from just being able to self-diagnose what the issues might be and then go out and look for strategies. Your podcast, for one, is great because you listen to other people's experiences and what they put in place, and then you trial those principles yourself or those techniques yourself to help find focus. The big ones for me have been actually around context and understanding more of what it means to be a person and what it means to be a human functioning. And philosophy has been a large one of that. Quite often sort of finding answers to some of those kind of existential questions that you might find yourself thinking about in meetings about, documentation or something, really meetings about meetings. You can end up thinking about all sorts of things because somebody has created an idea in you. And you end up using that as a catalyst to spark off to go out thinking about something else, which kind of takes you off track from the conversation at hand in the meeting. So yeah, philosophy has been fantastic. Stoicism has been one of the really important strategies that I've put in place to really help with my dyslexia. It just puts you on a level playing field in order to function within your life. It's almost like an operating system that you can then build all your other principles and strategies upon that. So it's a great starting position. Also breathing. It sounds obvious, but being able to take a breath and calm that part of your brain down by breathing in slowly and exhaling is just a great technique in any position. I can find myself with ADHD in a meeting rambling on and sometimes talking about things that go down rabbit holes which aren't on the agenda of the meeting itself. So being able to breathe allows my brain to kind of go, you know what, I don't need to go that deep into this. I can give the skinny of what the principle is that I'm trying to discuss and then move on.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the Stoic philosophy helping. I've been a fan of it as well. It's making me think about maybe the obstacle is the way Ryan Holiday's take on Stoicism, how some of the challenges that we experience might ultimately lead to a better way of approaching things overall, even though it's uncomfortable. Is that some of what you mean with Stoicism?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a fantastic way of setting yourself at ease. There are things out of your control and you don't have to control them. Quite often with ADHD, it's about, the variations and the conditions of ADHD kind of put you in a position where you have to control your environment. You're making lists, you're controlling everything around you, you're putting yourself in a position where you want to remain safe. So it's a safety mechanism that your brain has put yourself in order for you to reduce anxiety and feel safe. And these are soothing techniques, if you like. They don't actually solve the problem. Rearranging or tidying your desk or removing yourself from a loud area or something like that. They don't actually solve the problem. They just remove yourself from what the issue really is. But practicing a philosophy like Stoicism can really put you in a great position to just let that stuff go. To know that there are things out of your control and you don't have to control them. It's not your business and it's not your monkey and it's not your circus. So why even start? Just let it go. And that's actually quite refreshing to think that way.
Yeah, definitely. I like that idea. In terms of what things are like now, have you found that by making these environmental changes and accepting the things out of your control, that you're able to lean into some of the strengths that probably come with your neurotype as well.
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of strengths. Certainly being dyslexic and having ADHD as well. There is a bit of a movement going on at the moment. I think it's certainly been more prominent in the last few years that a neurodiversity is almost like a superpower. And you see a lot of posts like this all over LinkedIn and these other areas. I understand the need to almost reframe the idea of a neurodiversity as being something positive. It's always previously been regarded as being a negative thing or a challenging thing for a lot of people who are neurotypical. And I think that campaign of redefining a challenging neurotype as a superpower for people who are neurotypical to almost accept it is a good thing. However, I kind of rail against it a little bit just because, there's nothing supernatural about maths anxiety or tripping over your words because you're unable to find the right words in a way or have the challenges that come with a neurodiversity. Although saying that there are some benefits of a neurodiversity or a neurodiverse diagnosis that can really help you. I mean, I found myself in meetings and problem-solving situations, especially at work and my professional life, where I'm able to jump ahead of the problem. I'm able to solve it within a very short period of time where my other colleagues would have to sit and discuss and chew over the issues and then come to the same conclusion. My ADHD would put me in a position where I'm quick to communicate or have an impulsive communication. Interrupting, basically, is another way of putting that. And I would blurt out the answer. This is what we need to do. This is how we solve the issue. This is how we solve the problem. And as helpful as that might be, it's more solutionizing. And being in a position with your dyslexic, you're able to find that solution because you're already trained in that dynamic way of thinking, because you're having to deal with masking, you're having to think differently and creatively to that of a neurotypical person, because you're having to put strategies in place that you can keep up. So you're almost thinking in a completely different way in order to appear, let's say, normal with everybody else. But the benefits of that is that you're able to now think in a completely creative and new dynamic way. So you're able to kind of foresee some of the problems that other people will just overlook. And I found in my professional life that is a great advantage. But there is one thing that I've learned that's been very, very positive, is that I need to shut my mouth. I can't just blurt out the answer. I need to allow everybody else to move with it, to move with and chew through the understanding of what the problem is. Because if you jump too soon, then one, you're kind of putting yourself in a position to then be the person to solve that problem. Now it's you who've got to go and do it. Whereas it has to be a team effort. You have to allow other people to bring the problem to the surface so everybody can understand, and then you can start introducing the solution that you might be thinking of. Then everyone else can be on board. Then it's almost like a team effort. You're allowing everybody else then to adopt the solution because we've all got there, as opposed to one person just saying, follow me. And that's not what happens in a team working environment. So there are strengths, great strengths for neurodiverse. There's, I think with ADHD as well, is finding that hyper-focus position. I mean, I can look up from my computer 5 hours later and just think, my God, where did that time go? There are also disadvantages of that hyper-focus, is sometimes for me, it takes me a long time to get there. You'd probably find this as well, maybe, I'm not sure. I think a lot of people do, but I'm more of a flywheel approach to starting my day. In the mornings, it takes me a long time to get moving, 2, maybe 3 hours just to trudge through that first initial motivational push to actually start work or start something that's solving a problem that I might be doing either at work or personal life. And if I don't allow myself to go through that sort of slow winding, there's like this flywheel approach to actually building, I can't build up enough momentum to then use that passion to start working throughout the rest of the day. But if I do, and I allow myself just to kind of YouTube or explore some strange ideas or passion projects and things like that in the morning, then I'm allowing that kind of flywheel to build momentum. And then throughout the rest of the day, I end up achieving 8-9 hours work in 4 hours because that focus this has taken over. I'm now straight into it and I don't look up from my computer. And it's a great advantage, but sometimes it takes a long time to get there. It happens throughout the week as well. So Monday to Friday. Monday and Tuesday, nah, no good. But from Wednesday to Friday, yeah, it's productive city. It's, yeah, a lot of stuff happens for me during then. Yeah.
Let's now talk about your work in terms of the Wednesday to Friday, killing it in productive city. What are you doing during those times?
Yeah, I have a great advantage actually working for an awesome Kiwi company, Tait Communications. But the main focus of what I do in my personal professional life and my professional life at work at Tait is a strong focus on accessibility. So I've been working a lot actually throughout most of my professional career in academic course creation and program creation, online learning. That seems to be where I've naturally fallen into. And the user experience side of, or learning experience side of that has been a very strong component of my career, even now. And it's been something that's allowed me to be in this position to start working in this area. It's always been that way because I've been able to hyper focus in a way that's allowed me to get into the nitty-gritty about coding, CSS, HTML, JavaScript, building websites, that sort of thing has allowed me to move into this area. User experience for me today is still a very new thing. It's still a very new area in the industry. Over 20 years ago, we used to just call it design. And it was always something those old days of being a webmaster, where you make the website, design the website, publish the website, manage the website. All of those things were something that you would always, that was always your kind of responsibility. So those skills and advantages are certainly working in this roundabout way, or this ramble way of what I'm trying to say is that the main things that I am doing at the moment is using those aspects in order to cater for people learning online. And the main purpose of that, the main driver of that is catering for neurodivergent learners, particularly adults. It seems to be the area that I care a lot more the most about. You can cater for children who are online learning, but I think adults tend to get almost forgotten in that sort of push for neurodiversity catering in an online learning environment. So that's my passion. And working in the telecommunications industry, we're not short of neurodivergence. There's a lot of people who certainly present or manifest certain neurodiverse traits, which are the main considerations for ensuring that online learning does cater for those people and those needs. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds so important. I think back to when I was at uni with Blackboard as our learning management system, not very accessible.
Yeah, learning management systems, it's kind of ironic that they are these large behemoths of websites that are able to cater for this large audience of online learners, but sometimes they're not that accessible. So yeah, a lot of my work is trying to make the UI accessible as possible and a good place to start learning, because it's going to be more and more prominent. Now, more and more people are coming into the industry to learn from different aspects of their lives. You know, it could be a senior learner coming in to upskill for a new job that they're taking, or if they've got to take a health and safety course. It's very rarely actually in the environment which they're working. It's normally they have to go online to do a health and safety course. And if they're new to technology or they've been out of the industry for a while, then if the technology is not catering for their neurotype or even their condition, then they're not going to be successful. So that's the mission, is to try and help those people as best as possibly can.
Awesome. When you're not working on that, what do you do in your off time?
A lot. Yeah, a lot of different projects on the go all the time. There's renovating a house. I've been doing that for the last 8 years. There's lots happening with that. Super passionate about a lot of different projects, and it's something that I have to allow myself to just delve into. And it could be anything creative. As long as I'm doing something and making something and learning about something, then it's all good. They're big into fitness. I've done martial arts for most of my life. Well, since I was 12, which has been incredibly beneficial for someone who has a neurotype, especially ADHD. It kind of puts you into the position where you have to fall into hyper focus. Otherwise, the risk is that you could injure yourself.
I'll get hit in the head.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's something really beneficial about just forcing yourself into a position where you have to be calm, you have to concentrate, you have to go with the flow and understand what it is that you're doing and use the techniques and this rule-based working with martial arts that means that you can be successful, especially when you're rolling around on the mats with a 90-kilo man. It's important that you find that flow state so nothing goes wrong. And the benefits of that is that afterwards, after an hour session, 2 hour session, that good feels that almost you've satisfied that condition of your neurotype, that want and desire to hyper focus. The benefits of that are long lasting. You can sort of go the whole weekend and just think, wow, that was great. Just feel really, really good. And then Monday you're back into it again, which is fantastic.
Mm. Do you do BJJ or what type of martial arts?
Yeah, I did a lot throughout my youth, in my early years. So I started with karate, then to Taekwondo. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is very much part of the karate component that I'm doing now. One of the ones I always remember was going to Thai kickboxing, which is what I went into straight away as soon as I moved to New Zealand, was to join a club here after 4 or 5 years of doing kickboxing in the UK. And that was great. The rules are very different here in New Zealand than they are for the rest of the world. Pads aren't so much used or even recommended, which is a real eye-opener. So that was quite cool.
So no shin pads.
For practice, certainly not in the ring or anything like that. Yeah, what was regarded as K1 Thai kickboxing was just kickboxing here in New Zealand. So yeah, rules are very different. It's a little bit harsher, a little bit more practical, which is cool, which is really, really good fun. It's something I really cherish. It's really good to get a chance and an opportunity to do those certain things. And I think it really helps the neurotype, especially with dyslexia and ADHD, is to kind of have that outlet, especially this physical outlet. It quite often, especially when you're working in a sort of problem-solving space, a lot, if it's in a computer, or if it's writing, or even if it's building or whatever with your hands, if you're able to break out of that and do something completely physical, which means that you have to follow a rule-based system, you have certain moves and combinations and techniques that you want to use, it's completely different to real fighting because you're actually in an agreed tussle with somebody else. If you're sparring or if you're running drills or something like that, it's almost forcing yourself into a position where you have to concentrate. And if you can allow yourself to fall into that, you can disappear for 2 hours and then you get a great workout and you feel so much better afterwards because it's releasing all those positive endorphins that come with exercise anyway. So it's great.
Yeah, I did Krav Maga for some time. I stopped because I wasn't good at it and I was getting too many head blows and I was worrying about it. But I do see what you mean about leading to calmness and concentration. And I think that did flow into other areas of my life. Is that one of the things the teachers would always say is when you're sparring to try and the blood, like in the James Bond trailer, it has the red mist cover your eyes.
Yes.
Trying to avoid getting into that and still being able to maintain alertness and calmness even in a situation where someone's trying to hit you. And I think that flows through to confrontations at work, just being able to still retain calmness and making sure that I'm not going too hard at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's where stoicism really comes into play. You know, if you're able to combine the two, you can allow yourself to not get flustered in those sort of situations. But it's really interesting because, you know, polite society says that we don't walk around and start knocking each other in the head. So you're in a very sort of primal state of mind when you're in a practice state or if you're in a sort of sparring situation. You're having to fight against a lot of those urges and situations that arise, a lot of those conditions in your brain that say, this is something I shouldn't be in. It's either that fight or flight state, I should just run away from this. But you're having to combat that and say, no, this is just practice, but this is a position that I'm not comfortable with. And it's not every day that you get to kind of be in a position like that. So there is some advantages practicing like that for many different reasons. It's certainly out of the norm to be in a sparring position with somebody else. Yeah.
Hi there, Focus and Chillers. Are you ready to supercharge your knowledge in the realms of creativity, tech, and psychology? Come check out my fortnightly newsletter. In each edition, you'll get quick wins and actionable takeaways that you can put into practice right away. If this sounds like you, I'd love to have you as a reader. Subscribe for your fortnightly dose of insights. The link is in the show notes. And now, let's get back to the show.
Going back to You mentioned a few things that help you to be productive. You mentioned the Stoic philosophy overall, breathing during meetings, and the flywheel approach to your day. Can you tell me more about, with the flywheel approach, how do you avoid it becoming not just 2 hours spent in building up to it, but potentially the whole day of going down various inspirational pathways and not actually doing the tasks on the list?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd like to say that the 2 hour flywheel approach is robust and it can never be stopped. And the reality is that, yes, you do end up sometimes stretching out throughout the day. But there are strategies that I've put in place that do prevent me from doing that. One is lists. I'm not a great list keeper or writer or maker, but for a working life, lists are quite good for me. I will always have a list to start the week. So a list of priorities that I know that need to be addressed, things that I need to do, or the meetings I need to set, or the people I need to contact, the emails I need to send. I have to have those lists in place, but they are a priority. So they're not so detailed, but they might be one or two words that remind me I need to do these things. But I don't hold myself to account to those lists. If I don't get anywhere near them, or if I'm able to tick off one for that day, then that's still a success. If I haven't ticked them all off for that day, it's not a big deal. Having a list there is almost a reminder, okay, now I've got to start work. Okay, now I've got to start work. And then you end up being distracted and pulled into another sort of thing that you might be thinking about. And yeah, that's a big one to prevent that from happening. But you've just got to allow yourself to go and look at that YouTube video, or go and research that grass seed that you were thinking about, or draw that little picture or that thumbnail thing that you're looking at that has no other relationship to your working and professional life, but you just have to go and do it. You have to go and get that. You have to bust open Photoshop and do it just to scratch that itch, if you like. And I suppose having lists there is a kind of a constant reminder that there is important things that you need to do. You're being held responsible. This is your responsibility. You have to go and do this. Is a great way to allow that flywheel to build up momentum, because it's happening in the background. You're allowing yourself to have that free time in order to build up that momentum, but you're also not denying yourself. One of the things with ADHD is that if you're denying yourself that impulse, then that impulse just grows and it does take over your life. And there are moments in my life that I can point to where I haven't satisfied that urge to go and do something, and it's ruined my day purely because I haven't been able to start anything else, or I've attempted to start things, but I haven't finished them because that thing that I'm thinking about is constantly in the back of my mind. And that can be incredibly disruptive, especially in your personal life as well. So you just have to go and do that thing. And it's almost a physical manifestation of not being able to do the thing that you want to do. I'm always thinking of that episode of The Big Bang Theory. You might remember it, maybe if you've watched it. Sheldon plays a learning lesson on Leonard, and he gives him a jumper, or he finds a jumper that he has to put on because he has to take a DVD back to the video store or something like that. He hasn't taken back, he's left it, and the video store is now closed. And so Sheldon says, you've got to wear this really itchy jumper just to step into my shoes. And so now you know how it feels. And Leonard won't take the jumper off. And when he does take the jumper off, he's covered in all these sores. And I think somebody says, what's that jumper made out of? Bees? And it's a great visual way to illustrate the physical feeling, the physical manifestation of not being able to do that thing that's constantly in your brain. And it does feel, it's almost a physical thing. If I don't do it, I almost feel sick. It almost feels that I have to do something. And being able to satisfy that, just go and do it, even for like a little bit, just to get that even started, I put it on one side. And now that flywheel is gaining momentum because I've got that list there and I can go and do those things. Having a reframing list at the end of the week as well is good. So get to the end of the week, have like an hour or so and go, right, here are the things I haven't done. Okay, let's shift the priority of this stack a little bit and we'll go into the next week and then we'll pick them up.
It's really interesting the way you're describing it, because I think I have operated that way a fair bit in the past, in terms of I'll wake up and there'll be some things that I feel driven to do, that where the task desirability is high and I really enjoy doing them. The thing for me that I find is I do experience that same kind of flywheel of motivation to go back to the things on my list, but I find that it's provoked by a high level of anxiety and guilt. I don't know if that's just me looking at it from an ableist lens of feeling bad that it's halfway through my working day and I haven't actually done any work yet, or is that actually a real thing? Do you experience anxiety around it, or it feels healthy to you that you know that the flywheel is going to kick in and that you're going to get to the work and so it's okay?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, absolutely. Anxiety is always prominent. It's always in the background. It's there because you have responsibilities. People are counting on you and doing these things, and you don't want to be seen to be that guy at work. And when you're doing something that isn't work, if someone were to find out and know that that's happening, then they may judge you and think, well, what are you doing looking at YouTube? You should be doing that thing. I think we need to do a different evaluation on what it is that we're doing. It's not so much the time that you're spending on something, it's the production of the thing afterwards. I'm able to be more productive in 4 hours solid work in a hyper focus than I am in a 9 hour day of going through all the tasks and the things I need to do. Of course, if you get an email comes in, then it's asking a question, then reply to it straight away. That's easy. But if you have tasks and things that you need to do, it almost like to give ourselves the allowance or just forgive ourselves. Look, we're working in a different cognitive variation to most people. This is how I get motivated, and I have to allow myself to do these things. I'm not wasting time. I'm building momentum in order to get there. And once I'm in my hyper focus state, I'll just smash it out. I will do everything that you want me to do. Other people can't find it. Coffee, a great motivator. Going for a run in the morning. Some people are able to fall into that. I mean, I've tried all of those things, and you have as well. They don't work for me in this state because of my cognitive variation. I have to give myself, these are the strategies that I found that work. It's not like I'm not being productive at work. I am, and I'm still achieving all the goals that have been, and the deadlines that have been set, and the tasks that have been, nobody said, you're not doing these things. It's just how I do them is different to the norm, I guess, and that's okay.
In terms of how you structure your day, one thing that I found in the past when I was doing the more free flow approach was I would get things done, but I wasn't necessarily working consistently throughout the day. I wouldn't actually finish the tasks until about 10 o'clock at night. That was fine at one point in my life, but now my wife complains about that and would like a bit more time with me in the evening. So I've been compressing my work day and trying to finish at a regular time, which has meant that the free flow approach doesn't work as well. How is it for you? Do you extend out your day, or do you find you can still finish by 5 p.m. because of the hyperfocus?
Yeah, it's similar story as well. Gone are the days where I can just work into the evening, 10 o'clock at night, and then switch my computer off and then go and watch 4 hours of TV and then go to bed early in the morning. Yeah, you have to put yourself in that kind of framework, if you like. There are times where I'll allow myself to go over 5 o'clock and stretch into 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. But that's only because if there isn't responsibilities there, if there's somebody there and my wife is expecting us to sit down and have dinner, or if we're going to go and walk the dogs, or I've got other social engagements that I need to attend to, having an alarm on my phone that's set half an hour before I have to go and do that thing is really important. It just means, okay, I've got half an hour now to wind down, put things away, and go and get ready for that thing. And I've been in a position now where I'm able to be self-disciplined enough that I know that 5 o'clock now is I'm down tools, even though I haven't been able to hyper-focus as much as I've wanted to, I can still have the opportunity to do that thing tomorrow. And that's top of the priority list. I will go and do that. But having timers, having an alarm, having something which means that you have to have a hard stop at that time. Even if it's something as, okay, I now know need to go and sit with my wife and watch TV and have dinner. Just having an alarm for that is so beneficial because it just frees up the mind. You don't have to worry about constantly looking at the clock, worrying that you're going to go into hyperfocus and then 3 hours disappears without even knowing about it. But my advice, I think, has always helped me is that you set it half an hour before you do that thing. And depending on that thing, you can use that half hour, that extra half hour. You just hit snooze on the alarm and a couple of times, and then you can just sort of eke in a little bit more hyper focus if you ever wanted to. But it all depends on what that thing is. Yeah.
Yeah, the transition time is so important. I find it very challenging if I suddenly am asked to leave and I've only got 2 minutes to leave.
Right. Yes.
Very helpful to have the ability to snooze.
Yeah, my partner now is actually, she understands it so well. She'll ask me, or she'll tell me that we need to go somewhere an hour before I'm actually due to go somewhere. So she front loads me with a lot of time, which is great to kind of get up and get ready. And I'm getting to the point now where I actually know that. So I end up using that as a deposit of extra time. So she needs to maybe start reminding me 2 hours beforehand. Maybe that would work.
Well, this has been really fascinating talking about that approach to productivity. I had 2 quick questions I wanted to ask before we wrap up. And I'm sure I'll be tempted to ask follow-up questions, but I'm going to constrain myself. So the questions are about your mornings and evenings, if you have a structured approach to starting up the day, beginning that flywheel, and also winding down on the other end.
Yes, I do. Definitely when it comes to mornings first thing is to look at my list of things that I need to do. And then you kind of get a feeling of what's going to be happening throughout the day. And then I restructure that list in priority. The things that are higher priority at the top and the things that are lesser at the bottom. And throughout the day, that stack may change. But at least I have like a list of these are the top things I need to do. Top 3 are the most important. I might get some of those done in the morning, but then I'm allowing myself that sort of a couple of hours just to have more of a preamble to build up that flywheel. When it gets to the end of the day, I'm pretty good at when the alarm goes off is just shutting my laptop and then leaving. I can't almost have a wind down or a break from it. I have to just say, no, hard stop, it's done, and go. Because if I do allow myself that kind of wind down, or I just send that email, or I'll just go and look at that YouTube, or I'll just go and read that document that I was meant to go and read, I'm there for another 3 hours. So if I don't have a hard stop, if I don't just shut my laptop, then yeah, I'll be there for the rest of the evening. So that's what I do on a daily basis. On a weekly basis, it's like the same thing. But yeah, when it comes to Friday, hard stop again. It's just down tools and then go into the weekend and then don't look at work until Monday.
Down the digital tools and pick up the hammer to do the renovation work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Where can people connect with you to find more about your work?
Great question. I guess I'm on the socials. The main ones are LinkedIn. That seems to be growing in popularity. It seems to be where I'm getting most of my traction. Just look for Will Soward, quite a unique name. On LinkedIn, you could also go to willsoward.com, my highly pretentious URL, which is great. So a lot of my stuff has links to the things that I'm doing on the web there. And you can also send me an email as well. Yeah, happy to reach out. If anybody's got any questions, I'm quite happy to have conversations via email. Most people do actually contact me via email or LinkedIn. So yeah, happy to help and talk.
Awesome. And to wrap things up, do you have any final words or asks for the audience?
Yeah, I think when it comes to online learning, I think some of your audience are neurotypical. So I would reach out to them to understand more about neurodiversity and what those variations of human cognition are. It's a really interesting field. I like to think there is no stigma around it so much now as there used to be. And we're moving into time in our lives professionally that it is just being regarded as another way of thinking as opposed to being a disability. And if you have somebody in your team who is neurodivergent, is to give them a chance and just to listen to them, don't rush them, give them the ability to be neurodivergent because they're a great benefit to the team. I work in a team with several different neurodivergent people and it's a challenge at times, absolutely. But it's also incredibly dynamic and the work that we're able to produce is just fantastic. It works to such a fast pace and such a detailed approach to problem solving has been fantastic. So yeah, I'd like more people to be more cognizant of people's approach to working and how we work and how we get things done.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for being a guest.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been great.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Focus and Chill podcast. To listen to other episodes, jump onto podcast.focusbear.io. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or you know someone who'd be a good fit, email us at team@focusbear.io. Otherwise, stay focused, stay chilled, and peace out.